Coming in, it is brothel creepers with, with those high wedge soles. What do they call them? I remember they used to
Desert boots.
Desert boots, that's right, yeah. Ronnie Burke, how are you?
I'm very well indeed, Andrew. Yourself?
I'm terrific, and good to see you, and thanks for coming in. Now, we're just going to explore a little of the persona of Ronnie Burke, if you don't mind here.
Do I have one?
I think you do. I think you do. You were kind of a late starter in radio, weren't you?
I was 35 when I started in radio, went to Charters Towers in North Queensland.
Now, you're a Victorian boy, though,
I'm
weren't
a Victorian boy, yeah, yeah.
And what sort of prompted you? What were you doing until you went to radio?
I worked for the good old Victorian Railways, as it was then.
Did you? For how many years?
Golly, since I was 17 till I was 35. Yeah.
Right from school. What sort of department of the railway?
I was working in, worked at Wangaratta in the goods sheds there, and then worked at the Spencer Street goods sheds.
Which is now the Grand Hotel.
Which is now the Grand Hotel, or something. No, it's over there near Etihad Stadium.
Oh, that part, I see.
I used to work in a little office way down there where Etihad Stadium now stands. My daughter doesn't believe me.
Yes, it's all part of history, isn't it? I realise so much of that railway, this thing is gone, all that development there, and they've cut back. It would have been a shrinking VR when you were working there, wasn't it? Because the lines were being closed down a lot in the 70s, 60s and 70s.
That came probably just after I left, yeah.
Was it, I mean, I was regular paying a secure job, but I suppose you were getting a bit bored.
A bit bored, and I always wanted to be in radio. I don't know why it took me so long, because ever since I was a little boy, listening to the radio in my grandmother's house in North Melbourne, I always wanted to be on the radio, listening to people like Norman Banks, Norman Swain, Nicky and Graham.
You remember Nicky and Graham?
I remember Nicky and Graham.
You see, they're just before my time. Was Nicky that good?
Oh, yeah.
He was terrific.
You would have heard some of their stuff on...
I've only heard a little bit when Keith McGowan played it. I really never heard any concentrated amount of his stuff. And why did... Well, I suppose you got married and you had kids, and I suppose that would have made it difficult to go into radio.
And, well, I dragged my family up to North Queensland.
Now, you would have had... What age were your children have been at the time?
Brendan was in grade 3, and Michelle had just started high school. Yes, it was very bad of me. I sometimes think about that now and think, oh, gee, what a terrible thing that was to do.
Yes. How did Mrs. Burke cope with it?
Oh, yeah, she was all right. She was cool.
Because Charters Towers is a long way.
It's a long way, but we had a good time there. Yeah, there was an interesting radio station because it had only just opened, and myself and one woman, we were the only staff.
The only staff?
The only staff. I used to do 3 hours on air, go out and sell advertising, and the girl there, she used to write the copy up and answer the phone and do all that sort of stuff.
You just have a music format, I imagine?
Just a music format, yeah.
And was it on, well, how long was it on air then, per day?
3 hours a day, and the rest of the time we took a relay from Townsville.
Oh, I see. So it was only you for 3 hours a day?
Just me. And
what about technical staff?
Well, if something went wrong, we had to get a bloke come out from Townsville, yeah. which is from Charters Towers is a good couple of hours drive.
I was going to say, if there were any emergencies, you'd be in real trouble, wouldn't you? And just the one studio, I imagine, and the basic record library.
One studio, record library. They used to send us out, now this is interesting, they used to send us out a box of records from Townsville every week with a couple of the current top 40s and a big pile of albums to play. And then we had to put them in and send them back on the carrier's truck, and they'd come back, another box would come back the next week.
Oh, you had to post them back? You weren't allowed to keep them?
You weren't allowed to keep them, no.
Well, so I imagine from this sort of tight budgetary constraint, you weren't overpaid, you or the girl?
Oh, yeah, the pay was all right, actually, because we were on commission for the advertising.
Oh,
and
I see.
That used to bring it a bit, yeah.
And was there any competing station at Charters Towers at that time?
No, scratchy old ABC from Townsville, and the commercial stations from Townsville even more scratchy. Yeah.
So you just knocked on doors down the main street trying to sell a news agent?
Street, and most of the advertisers were pretty keen to come on board because it was new, you see.
I reckon this is pretty big, what you did. You've changed from being a guy working behind a desk to going at the age of 35, taking the family way up north, and suddenly becoming a salesman / announcer, whatever, and sort of manager of the station.
Yeah, I didn't particularly enjoy the sales part of it, but the town was pretty sort of friendly towards the radio station, and they weren't very reluctant to buy ads. So
it was okay. Yeah. And how long did you last there?
I stayed there 12 months, and then we came back to Victoria, to 3BA in Ballarat.
What was that like? Was that still with Ernie Wicks there?
Ernie Wicks was still the manager.
He'd been there since 1930,
I think he'd been there since the station opened. They had very interesting rosters at 3BA, which were a bone of contention for most people. I used to do one midnight to dawn, Saturday midnight to dawn, then I had Sunday, well, sort of Sunday off, and then I did Monday breakfast.
They
didn't have a regular breakfast around it. I think I did Monday and Tuesday breakfast, and then probably a couple of afternoons. But it was an amazing...
Oh, dear. Your stations used to be run like that, weren't they?
It was just weird.
And what was Ernie Wicks like, or Wicks, whatever his name was?
Well, didn't really have much to do with him. He just sort of sat in his office. We were up on the second floor. It was quite a good station to work at, because once you'd done your air shift, there was nothing else to do. I mean, theoretically, you were supposed to stay there for 8 hours, but...
Well, and same with the 3GL. Reg Gray was the manager when I was at 3GL. He'd been there since 1935, and this is 77 or whatever. And he had a very bung leg, and he actually, and the studios were upstairs, and his office was downstairs. So he literally couldn't get up the stairs by the time. So you can imagine what the studios were like some nights when some of the announcers, would bring girls back, and etc., etc.
Oh.
Nothing was ever known by. Well, maybe it was by Reg, but he was sort of a nice old man. He was rather gentle and of another world, and he still talked about presenting the most professional session. And he always talked about your session on air, Andrew, and stuff like that. And we expect professionalism.
Yes, well, you would have been at 3GL at the same time I was at 3BA then.
It would be around the same, yes. It would be. So from 3BA where?
Then I went to Dunedin and then to Warrigal.
Which is old home ground for you, isn't it, Warrigal?
Yes, because I spent my teenage years in beautiful Maui.
Did you? Well, what did your dad do?
He was a school teacher, so we moved around a lot. So I think that gets into your blood, that you just like moving on all the time.
Because well, now you've stayed here. My favourite story about Ronnie Burke is that Ronnie Burke retires. We all go to the big retirement ceremony. You were there, weren't you, Marco? I don't know. I was there, I know that. And there's the cake, and there's all this, and Ron, what you've been great in this industry. Thank you. And that was like on a Friday. On Tuesday, Ron is back on air. What happened there, Ron?
Well, I said to Rob Curtin, the news director at the time, I'm going to retire. Oh, yes, okay, but I wouldn't mind coming back and doing a bit every now and again. And he said, yeah, maybe we can work at that, It wasn't long before the phone rang, and I was back doing a bit every now and again.
And here you are, at 28 past 2 in the morning, still doing it. I was lovely to see Ron. Now, I know, like me, you're a fan of the rock and roll.
The rock and roll. Now, this takes me back to my days at Werribee High School, would have been about 1956. And we used to go down to the Milk Bar in Watton Street, Werribee. Tucker's Milk Bar it was, and they had a jukebox there, and we used to play songs like Guy Mitchell, Singing the Blues, and Jerry Lee Lewis. Whole lot of shaking going on.
Here it is. Thank you, Roddy. Bah.